Hi, this is Steffi and welcome to the FinancialFox for a special episode focused on gaming infrastructure, which is a big topic right now, especially when we enter the world of Web3. This episode is a panel discussion with two forward-thinking founders. They are innovating the space of Web3 infrastructure. Carlos Rene is the founder and CEO of Dega, an innovative gaming startup which provides scalable infrastructure and fast transaction for Web3 gaming and the metaverse. And Prashant Maurya is co-founder and CEO of the decentralized infrastructure company Spheron Network, which provides decentralized, cost-efficient hosting, storage, and compute services to Web3 and Web3 customers. So forget about AWS and Google Cloud. Here we are on another planet. We are on the future planets, and we are discussing this with you. The focus for both Dega and Spheron is on user experience. So building technology that people don't have to struggle to use. They don't have to run the extra mile to build something, but they can easily do. They can also have an infrastructure that is easy interoperable. And I think this is one of the key aspects of Web3 is really about UX. I really enjoy this discussion with Carlos and Prashant. I hope you do too. If you are in gaming and interested in understanding the next generation of infrastructure, this is the episode that you should watch. If you have got any feedback, any comment, any question, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can do it via email at steffi@financialfox.news, or you can comment on our social media, and we will do the best we can to help you and also to put you in touch with our amazing guests. So this was great. Now enjoy the panel. And anything, let us know. We are always here to foster innovation, and we love the engagement with our community. Remember, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, click the subscribe button now and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our news and interviews. And now, a quick word about the FinancialFox channel sponsor. Greengage provides e-money accounts for small and medium-sized enterprises, high net worth investors, and digital assets firms. They leverage the latest technologies, including blockchain, to unlock new funding and liquidity, a game-changing for many SMEs, which are fundamentally underserved by traditional financial services. As a client of Greengage, you will have a dedicated relationship manager, yes, a real person who will listen. And getting started with Greengage is easy. Trust me, I've gone through the process myself and it's been really simple and quick. So if you're seeking a more personalized experience in managing your accounts in the digital space, I genuinely encourage you to check out Greengage. And here is a little bonus for you, my wonderful listeners. Use the code FOX10 when signing up to enjoy a 10% on the first year's fee on corporate accounts only. The link is in the description, so take a moment to explore what Greengage has to offer. Now, back to the show. Hi guys, how are you?
Doing great, Steffi. Thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, it's brilliant to have you both on the show. So today we are discussing a very, I would say, a compelling topic because it's a gaming infrastructure. And we know that decentralization and blockchain has brought some interesting feature to the gaming industry, and some they are very valuable, especially when it comes down to players, to ability to monetize their assets, and it's all about the future of gaming. So let's get started, and let's go straight to some introduction.
Hello. Yeah, happy to start, Steffi. Thank you. So on my side, I've been doing computer science for over 13 years now, and I've been in the blockchain space for over 6. I created my own development studio. Me and my team have done everything from deploying new layer ones, side chains, cross-chain dexes, NFT, minters, and other types of applications. I also had the pleasure of working 1 year at IOHK, leading their Cardano sidechains programs, particularly centered around EVM technology. And now I've been focused on Dega for over a year, where we want to bring the same experience that AWS brought to the internet. That's what we want to bring to the blockchain space, focused on gaming, right? And additionally to that, we also are building a crowdfunding product called ISPO, which I'm happy to go into details later on.
Oh, fantastic. Prashant, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steffi. Coming to myself, I've been building software close to around 12 years now, building company for the past 4 years into the Web3 space itself. So done a lot of things. And over the span of time, the only job I have done is to build around the infrastructure itself. So during my early stage of careers, worked into infrastructure. And then after coming into the Web3 space, did not even thought to kind of work here also in Web3 infrastructure space. But we ended up in doing infrastructure. So what we are building at Spheron is a unified platform where anyone or everyone can go and start building or launching their application within a line of a code or within a click of a button. So that is what we are trying to enable at Spheron. And we have been building on this solution for more than 3 years now as we speak. And our intent is to go and build for the next, I don't know how many years, till the time I have strength in my arms and my brain, I'll keep on building into that area. So that is where we are at Spheron now.
I love it. I love it. So much passion. I'm going to build until I die. Oh my God, Prashant, you are an idol. So let's talk about what are the current centralized solutions and why they have lots of limits, especially for the next generation of games. And Carlos, you mentioned about AWS. Perhaps that's a good point to start.
Yeah, happy to do so. So the current centralized systems, right, in gaming, right, besides the fact that from an infrastructure perspective, they have a single point of failure, right? Like it's one company, right? So in the sense like people are investing thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours, right, on a monthly basis on games, right? And right now it's dependent on one company. So if that company makes a mistake and they go under, right, you just lost all the time that you invested in that. You're not part of an ecosystem, right? So that's where, let's say, the infrastructure centralization takes place, right? That's why the work that companies like Spheron and Dega are doing is so relevant. And then there's the other limitation, which is around the IP. So a lot of these games, you wouldn't believe how restricted the usage of their IP is. Like they'll tell you how to run your own gaming streaming channel with their content, right? They say you can't do this, you can't talk about this other subject, you can't play it this way, you can't lock it or monetize it in this other way. So they're dictating to you how you will do your business if you want to work with them, right? And if you don't follow the guidelines, you're off. You're immediately banned from the platform. So this is why these are the limitations of the current centralized state of gaming.
Okay. Prashant, is there anything else that you want to add?
So I just wanted to add a few more points what Carlos has just covered here. I believe he has covered everything nicely. So one point is also just wanted to give it with a quick example around it. So let's say you are playing a game, and all the games apart from infrastructure, all of these games are also going to be having its own assets. And what are those assets are? Those assets can be your skin in the game, let's say you bought a cap into the game, you bought something into the game, right? So all of these things becomes an asset. And when you own an asset, what does that asset as a definition means? You own it, not the company own it, right? So let's say what Carlos has just mentioned, if the company goes down, it goes down. All the asset whichever you have earned and everything is gone the day it just goes down or something happens. So that basically means your hours of effort which you have just put in playing the game is no longer there to present or show it to anyone. And that is where the bigger challenge comes into the picture and start trickling into the gaming infrastructure. And what we look at on the Web3 side is the allowing people to build something over a decentralized infrastructure. And that is where decentralized infrastructure comes into handy more and more as you kind of get into more deeper integrity of it. And then on top of that, I was not a gamer earlier. So I used to play PS1 in my very early days, but over the time I kind of left that and started playing the real game, like going into IRL. But later realized like a lot of people are making money by building some box game as well. So that is when I kind of started looking into again in the gaming space and realized one more very interesting thing. And I think Carlos will also agree on that is if I'm playing a FIFA on PS5, I can't play the same FIFA on Xbox. The reason is because of the disconnect between these two worlds, right? And if you look at Web3 ecosystem as such, just imagine you built a game on Ethereum And on that chain, you can go and access the same assets, same links, same whatever you want to, and build another game altogether, or you can connect all the different ecosystem from one ecosystem itself. So that is where another level of scalability comes into the picture and allows people to not to build multiple or different ecosystem versus just play into the same ecosystem and grow that as well. So that is where the difference kinds of trickle into as we kind of compare with Web 2 based gaming system versus Web 3 based gaming system where it is going now.
Yeah, that's interesting because I guess that also games, Web3 games, they are kind of built with a different mindset from Web2 games. And that's where there is maybe a problem with the current infrastructure, especially when you mention about owning your own asset, but also moving your own assets across different ecosystems and being able to monetize those assets as well. But I feel like we are still in a stage where there is a lot of experimentation. This game, most of them, they are still in development, so they are not ready yet to use, to get mass traction and mass adoption. So I think this is like the point where the current infrastructure like AWS, they are still able to provide, or they still want to try to provide their solution. My question will be, what are, if you have to list those aspects, they are of games, they are different from the Web 2 gaming space, they are more Web 3 native. What would you think will be those elements that need a solution? We can call it even the pinpoint of the Web3 gaming. They need, a different, a level up infrastructure, a better infrastructure.
So I was recently working with a gaming company and they are building gaming infrastructure as well. So kind of started supporting them to understand is like what are the problems in the gaming infrastructure comes into and how they kind of think about the gaming infra. And while I was talking to them, and this is the majority of the question which most other people will ask, is there really a difference between Web3 gaming infrastructure and the Web2 gaming infrastructure? If you look at a very high level, the difference should not be there, okay? Because at the end user should not even worry about the differences. If the end user is worrying about differences, that is where you are killing your Web3 experience or killing the user experience or whosoever is going to be playing your game. So the intent is to keep both the worlds same. It should look same, but underneath it should not. So it's like, let's say, in the account abstraction when it came into the picture, right? So suddenly everyone was not even worrying about gas fees anymore, right? So now anyone can sponsor your gas fees and now you don't even have to have a certain token in your wallet to pay for that gas, right? The same way it has to happen on the gaming industry as well. The people who are buying the assets inside the game, they should not be forced to open a MetaMask. They should not be forced to open a certain kind of mask, like a certain kind of wallet altogether. And the experience should be very similar. I know we are still behind in building those experiences, but there are companies who are building into this space. And it's amazing to see is like how fast they are moving into this space. And coming to the AWS part, again, AWS is the underlying infrastructure that can be replaced by any time. The moment you have a solid infra been built around in the gaming ecosystem itself. But I would love like Carlos to also kind of add in some points. That is what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Prashant. Yeah, happy to do so. So I think you nailed it in the main point, right? So what you're talking about is essentially the product UX, right? Like I don't need to be able to be aware that I'm using Web3 to enjoy the benefits of Web3. That's how it should be. That's not where we are right now, but that's how it should be. And a good example I like to give to everybody like is, every time we're using the internet right now, we're using protocol encryption, we're using networking protocols as well. We're using a whole bunch of systems that we're really not even aware of. And we couldn't care less about them, but they have to be there, right? They better be there. Like I definitely want my passwords to go encrypted when they're going on the network, even if I'm not thinking about it. That's how it has to be. So that same thing has to be for gaming, right? And going to your original question, Steffi, about what are the attributes that should differentiate Web3 gaming from Web2, I think that one of them is true asset ownership, right? Which is something that Prashant touched upon at the beginning, right? So I should own my asset regardless of the game. Right, like if the game disappears, if the company doesn't want to work on it anymore, or if somebody else wants to create another derivative experience that uses my asset, my digital asset, that should be possible, right? So I should have true ownership of my asset. That's one. The other one is we're talking about having open systems, right? Open APIs, right? Again, people have no idea how incredibly restrictive the usage of the current systems is, right? They will tell you what you can charge for, what assets you can upload. The other day I was talking with an esports company and they tell me that every time they want to do like a partnership with some of these games, Web2 games, it's 6 months when they actually want to get it done. Right, when they're excited to have you on their platform and do a partnership with you to sell digital assets, it's 6 months, right? If they're like, if you're a nobody, it's 8 months plus, right? If you're somebody that isn't famous, right? So in Web3, like I can just jump in right now, write a script, upload the content. Like it'll take me a day or 2 days to upload a new, be it NFT or a new token or a new soulbound, right? And integrate it into a new game and experience. And I don't even need to ask for permission, right? So I think that open APIs are definitely the second key part. And the third one is community, right? So right now, like a lot of people aren't aware that the normal growth for a game is like going parabolic on the first few weeks or months and then dying off slowly over time, right? That's what happens to most games. Like a game like Fortnite or like Roblox, they're the exception to the rule, right? Having a game that outlasts like several years. What's the difference, right? Why Roblox and Fortnite are growing while other games die off? Because they have community, right? And they don't even realize this fully, right? Or somewhat. They're kind of like realizing it right now. But basically, it's the fact that they have a whole ecosystem and social experience around their game. That's what gives it its lifeblood, right? And renews it. So in Web3, this is like super obvious to us, right? Everything in Web3 is about community, right? So to give you an example, right? Like there's a new game, a new guild system that was deployed on PUBG, right? I think I don't recall if they called it guilds or something else, but there's now a clan system. That's what they call it there. So I went and tried to find the clans. Like I want to see who's out there, what are the clans and everything, and all that I could find was a leaderboard. They have no tooling, no community-oriented applications, right? And in Web3, when we did guilds in Web3, when they started booming in the last bull cycle, like they came out of the gate community-oriented, right? It's not game-oriented. The focus should be the people. So that is something that Web3 gets like natively. Web2 kinda starts to get it in some games, but most of them don't. So again, just to summarize, is true ownership, open APIs, and community oriented.
Well, I think Carlos, you explain it really, really well. And one of the aspects that I want to pick up from your answer is the concept of decentralization, and put this question to Prashant specifically. So how does decentralized infrastructure unlock value for gamers and also games creators?
I believe most of them has already been, like we have just discussing about the decentralization, about the community and other aspects. Now, if you look at a very high level, community is nothing but it's also infrastructure which adds the value to the entire like gaming ecosystem. So that makes them become an infra to kind of take it forward. But specifically talking about the digital infrastructure, which is behind the scene, running the engine, running the nodes, running all of those things, that is where just to kind of focus on those areas. So first thing first, like I said, is like owning an asset. How you own an asset when your data is sitting on a centralized database where I can go and modify whenever I want. So that is one place where decentralization comes into the picture and helps gamers and the community there to own these assets in a real format, not in a just fictionary format, right? So that is where the fun part of it. Second part of it is like, if you know, running a gaming ecosystem is quite expensive as well at a very high level. So let's say if you are building a game in that you have a live stream or something, or let's say if you're building a game which has certain kind of backup which has to be enabled, believe me, in terms of infrastructure, it becomes way expensive to kind of manage from day zero without any credits. So that is where another level of help which comes into the picture on the decentralization part. So for example, at Spheron itself, right? So if somebody goes and uses Spheron for deploying their APIs, endpoints, or even their web hosting or any of these things, they become at least 25 to 30% cheaper than any other existing infrastructure provider, and they don't even have to manage those things. So that is where the additional cost, or you can say benefit, comes off a decentralization, the part of the cost side, where you can get all of those infra at a much more cheaper cost because the market is open for that. The third and the most important part is the speed of building this infrastructure. So that is where I personally feel like it becomes very important. So for example, what Carlos has just mentioned is like, go ahead and I can just without 8 months spending, I can do it in next 2 days or 1 day, or depending on like what exactly you're looking at. So that is where again it enables. And then the fourth and the most important part is the cross-chain compatibility. That basically means like you don't have to just rely on one chain. You can go and play multi-chain from the day one. It's like calling yourself like you are building for PS5 and enjoying your game on Xbox. Okay, so that is what it basically means in the gaming term. But that can be easily enabled in the Web3 infra space, and this can only happen with the decentralization into place. So these are the benefits which any one building into the space who are using Web3 infrastructure, which is a decentralized infrastructure, can leverage from day one.
Brilliant. And just to give our viewers a bit of information about where are you building, what kind of blockchain you have got integrated, so then they know where Spheron is operating.
So first of all, we are building remotely. We don't have any such offices at this point of a time. We thought we'll have one office in India, in Bangalore or somewhere else. But then we thought like, okay, let people like build from their home. And that is what the ethos of Web3 as well. We have people across the globe, Africa, Serbia, India, Dubai, and US, and all of these places. So we had a very good team like building across the globe and 24/7. That is how we are kind of operating. Coming to again like Spheron as such, which are the chain which we are kind of building now. We are almost in most of the chain. Just day before yesterday, we also launched Spheron on Base, and then even as we speak, we are live on Polygon. Not Ethereum, because Ethereum has too much of a gas cost, and I know our users are not going to pay for that gas cost. So Arbitrum, Optimism, just name the chain, we are already there. So that is where we are kind of live now. Coming to like what are the things which we support at Spheron at this point of time as we speak. I believe we are recording it whenever this recording is going to go live. We have one very interesting thing. I don't know, like I believe a month now, or even 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, we are launching scalable compute. We are launching a nice revamped storage UI. So we are connecting all the dots of infrastructure, whatever is needed for a developer or a company to scale and launch their infrastructure on Web3 completely. So that is where at Spheron we are at, and that is what our offering are at this point of a time.
Wow, super interesting. I mean, the point about interoperability is definitely a game changer, but it really comes with a lot of challenges, because like one of my questions would be, there are different games, they've got different metaverse, different worlds where they are building. How can you make the assets interoperable with the same value across all those different worlds?
Well, I can take that one if you want. So there's two things to what you just said, right? There's one, which is the interoperability across infrastructure, right? In gaming, we actually need very little of it, in the sense that, for example, I can have, let's say I do a RPG game, right? And then I have my character and it's on the base chain, right? And then you have your character on, let's say, Polygon, right? We can take the metadata from those systems, right, and showcase it in the game. Then you and I can duke it out and have a fight. We don't really need to be on the same chain for that, right, for that experience. And that's going to be the case for most of the experiences, right? So the, let's say, engagement of the assets, it's not a big deal. Now, when do we do need interoperability? When, for example, if you have a shield that you're going to sell to me, right? Now I got to buy it. It has to be transferred to my wallet. If I don't have, a presence in Polygon, then the system underneath has to handle that, right? And for that, there's many protocols being developed already. There's bridges. There's many companies tackling this issue and building the systems for it, right? Again, the key here is just to abstract that away from the user, right? So a good thing that we're doing, for example, at Dega, is we're building all of our API based on what's called a meta transaction, right? So a meta transaction allows you to abstract away the payment of the gas fee in a given blockchain, and even everything can be abstracted away, like even building the transaction itself from signing it, right? So I still own my assets, you still need my permission, and my client software, my application, my game, my wallet, they all verify that the transaction is a legit, valid transaction. But I don't have to have any of the gas tokens. I don't have to be concerned about pointing to a given RPC endpoint. So right now, if you go and you have your wallet, let's say you have MetaMask and you target base, you need to add that. You need to add that chain to your MetaMask, right? And if you want to do Polygon, then you got to switch. So all of those things can be abstracted away. We've been doing it at me and my team before we even created Dega. We've been doing systems like this for like 4 years now, but you can abstract away that complexity, right? So that's what's going to enable this interoperability, right? The gameplay that doesn't actually need it, and then the underlying protocol plus meta transactions, which will allow you to be able to interact with the game without you even knowing that you're using multiple blockchains, right? And for examples of this type of software, you can look at Layer 0, for example, right? So Layer 0, that's what they do. They basically allow you to do multi-chain transactions, and they just handle it for you without you needing to even think about it.
Yeah, so it all comes down to one of the key points I think we mentioned before is about user experience, really UX being a priority for Web3. Is there anything else you think we should mention, Carlos, about maybe some of the work that you are doing at Dega that put user experience really at the top of developing games? And also, Prashant, then I want you to comment as well, because it's great to have a decentralized infrastructure solution, but what about the user experience, that if I'm a game developer, I want to come to Spheron because the overall experience is faster, is cheaper, is interoperable, but also is easy to do?
Yeah, so we're talking about actually like two types of users right now, right? In what you just said, which is there's the developer and then there's the end user, right? So for the developer, what we're doing at Dega that's really different is building the API in a way that it abstracts all the blockchain lingo, let's say, and even all the blockchain knowledge, right? And how so? I can give a very quick example, right? Like many of my colleagues, and I have large respect for most of them, but they're building tools that make my job easier, right? What they create makes my life more efficient, but it wouldn't work for a Web2 game developer, right? Let me give you an example, right? When they give you an SDK to create a smart contract, you have to do something like NFT.ERC721 new. Right, so it's like, what? Like a game developer is going to look at that. It's like, what the hell is an ERC721, right? He doesn't care about it, and he shouldn't care about it, right? So at Dega, for example, it would be more like asset dot unique new, right? So instead of saying NFT or saying ERC721, you're saying an asset, right? Or collection, new collection dot assets or whatever, right? So it's a lingo that's more oriented to what the gamer is used to than oriented to what Web3 actually means, right? So that's on the developer side of things. That's kind of like the innovation we're pushing there, like simplifying this API and SDK for the game dev. On the end user perspective, I think everybody's pretty much settling on account abstraction, right? We actually had designs for that even before that conversation started on the Ethereum world. But obviously, we're going to settle on going with standards. We don't want to make things that are hard to integrate. So everybody will probably be going to account abstraction. The only thing that I would add is there's probably a few other components like multi-party computation and meta transactions that allow you to even further simplify and abstract away the usage of a wallet with the application. Right, like I believe that at the end solution for the user experience on Web3 is to eliminate the word wallet. Right, we shouldn't say the word wallet. Just like right now, you don't say the word, for example, account when you're talking about your user. Right, you're just like, yeah, I just joined the application and I'm using the application. Right, you're not like thinking about the fact that you have to have an account in that sense, right? And that's where you would usually call it your profile, right? Like when you're in social media, it's my profile, right? You're not thinking in terms of private keys and the fact that you have a user and password pair. You do have it and you know it, but you're not thinking in that sense, right? It's more about people instead of things. And that's where I think that we need to take it with Web3. It's more about Carlos in the game than a Web3 wallet account in the game.
I think Carlos has covered the user perspective. So I'll be mostly like how exactly the user is going to be feeling like. So, but if you look at the asset side again, the same question drills down is how exactly these assets are going to be stored. And that is where Spheron or like decentralized like companies like us comes into the picture, makes the life easy. So for example, for my example, the entire system will change. So for me, Carlos will become my user, where I'll, instead of like asking Carlos to go and host your entire assets into some centralized servers or somewhere, we'll give them an API using which they can upload assets directly to decentralized infrastructure, and that is it. So just writing 2 lines of a code in their existing code base, the entire asset can be easily uploaded to decentralized infrastructure. That is where the storage part comes in the picture. And that is where we are simplifying the experience of making that part more decentralized. Now, second thing which comes into the picture is, it's fine, I can go and upload this asset to your decentralized infrastructure wherever you are, like asking me to upload. But what happens if I am going to retrieve the data out? Because just uploading is not everything. In gaming ecosystem, you need a robust system where you can retrieve the assets also with the same speed and efficiency. And that is where what we have done at Spheron is we have built an CDN layer, which is a content delivery network layer on top of our existing layer 0, which we call as the IPFS layer or the base layer. And then we built a CDN on top of that. That basically means like the experience for the Carlos users. So for example, like say if somebody, Carlos is onboarded hundreds of users, now those hundreds of users can see that content at the same speed as they can see anywhere else. So just to kind of summarize, but it goes a lot bigger. I'm just trying to just summarize it in a very simple term. So this is how exactly and the other part from the Spheron angle comes into the picture. And the same is applicable to launching your compute, launching your storage, launching anything around those areas. So that is where we took out the workload of developers to focus heavily on investing their money, research, R&D and everything on thinking about how to remove that wallet, what we have just discussed, and rest should be handed to us and they can focus on that area and we focus on our area. So that is where Spheron comes into the picture.
Prashant, how do you deal with the security? How can you, when you are talking to your partners, say, we are a solution, but we also put security as well as user experience at the top of our, priority.
So whenever you go to decentralized infrastructure, you get a security inherently by there. For example, let's say what Carlos just mentioned just a few minutes back, he was talking about MPC, which is multi-party computation logic or whatever, right? So using that, you can also decentralize your keys as well. So in that way, you don't have to rely on Spheron. So Spheron, whatever data you store on Spheron, it's a data which can be shown publicly very easily of a gaming assets. So security never becomes a concern there. Now security becomes a concern when, let's say you are running a compute logic on Spheron and that compute has some proprietary code or something which you don't want it to expose. And that is where what at Spheron, which we have done, and overall our learning into the Web3 infra space has pushed us to kind of build this solution. And that is what I spoke just a few minutes back was we are going to be launching a scalable compute. And that scalable compute, which is on-demand compute, which we are calling, is going to be enterprise ready, and it is going to be enterprise grade. That basically means like all the security concerns will be solved there. So that basically means like whenever you deploy via Spheron, you get all the security audits or whatever you're looking forward out of the box without even like having any concern there. So in that way, that is one more way to kind of secure your API endpoints or whatever you're kind of working on. So that is how we are going to be tackling. But at this point of time, even somebody goes and deploy anything, I don't see any security threat as such. Like deploying your API code or whatever, because it's a very straightforward. You make a call, you pull the asset, you give the assets to the user, and which is already happening on chain, which is a public data, and all the keys and everything is already handled by the teams like Carlos or in the Dega, right? So they are currently working on that infra part. So that is never our headache, and that is where I told is that is their job. Our job is to provide the infra. So whatever they need to make that happen, we are there to support. So that is how we kind of deal with security, but again, on the compute level, we are working on it. It is soon going to be live as well, the moment this video will go live.
Carlos, I have got a question about community engagement, because you mentioned that as being a very important part of Web3 gaming. And also I wanted to see if there is a way that we can bring in the concept of infrastructure around this. So one of the key things is really to build a reward system, to build engagement experience that actually benefit from a decentralized application. So how is Dega dealing with building those engaging experience? And I don't want to go to the point of tokenomics, but I would say, is there a way where Web3 infrastructure becomes very valuable to foster this engagement in the gaming community?
So first off, there with the community, basically, I think that many of the projects make the mistake of, again, putting things in front of people, right? So everything's about people. So at Dega, we definitely wanted to keep that in mind. So we created what we call the Tribes program, and we already have 13 tribes. They're kind of like the equivalent of a gaming guild, but we consider this a much more extensive, let's say, type of organization, right? We see them kind of like, if you would, like a gamified DAO in that sense, right? And in the sense of how the infrastructure comes into play in Web3, I think that that's, you said the key word there, which is tokenomics, right? So everything around, let's say, a progression system, right, which is what we use in games, right? When you start growing and leveling up, that's a progression system. And then there's the power system, which is like what you get, how does that equate to what somebody else gets, right? Like a power system, an example of a power system is like what Pokemon has, right? Like fire beats water, water beats earth, and earth beats fire, right? That's a power system, right? So basically, we're taking this and we're making it pervasive across the entire Dega ecosystem. So when you join Dega, you're kind of like already playing an RPG. We have daily competitions where we reward people with Dega. We have NFTs that you can level up based on the value that you provide to the Dega ecosystem. So the whole blockchain, let's say, experience, it's already ingrained in Dega from day one, right? In the sense of everything that you're doing is progressing you towards something, right? And when we deploy the meta layer of the protocol, which is that would be an entire conversation in and of itself, but essentially that'll be like the main thing for the Dega protocol, which is what will allow us to coordinate across multiple chains. When you do that, that will also have an impact in your, let's say, avatar in the system, right? So everybody in Dega will have their avatar, which is an NFT, which they will progress and improve and grow over time, like an RPG game. And the amount of the validation that you do in the network and how much you've safeguarded the network will also impact your reputation, which will in turn have effects on the governance side of things in the community, right? So one of the biggest issues that we've seen in the space, and I'm sure both of you are aware of many cases where somebody comes with a lot of money, buys a whole bunch of tokens, and then tries to take over the DAO, right? So to avoid this, we will be using a reputation system in the NFTs, right? The Dega NFTs. And that's, again, heavily connected to the progression system and the blockchain, tokenomics, and decentralized infrastructure aspect of it.
Yeah, I think you touched a very interesting point. I was just going to ask, if we have to address the challenges of scalability of Web3 infrastructure, what are the solutions? And you kind of started already to touch on the point. Is there anything else, Prashant, that you would like to add? Surely there are challenges to scalability of decentralized infrastructure. What can we do, or what are you doing in the direction of solving those problems, minimize it, make things better?
So if I speak from the front of Spheron itself, so for example, storing assets on IPFS in 2019 and 20 was like pain. Like you just upload anything and you keep you keep retrieving that asset it never used to return back. And after all, even it used to take a lot of time. Over the time, what happened is like the companies, there are tons of different companies which has kind of got built, like Pinata, NFT Storage, and tons of other companies, and in which Spheron was also one of the same as well. Where what we have built is to build a layer on top of that same existing infrastructure, which caches the data. So that adds the scalability layer. If you kind of look at a very bird eye view, where what we do is like we still use IPFS, but we don't use that IPFS layer directly to kind of have the data like retrieval process from the network. Rather, we pin that data to the nearest to our data location servers and we pull it from there. It becomes a little complicated to understand, but let me give you a very good example here. As we three of us are sitting together now, if I have to bring something back from Carlos, and let's say Steffi, you are in between, then I just have to ask you, Steffi, to pull that data, or ask like Carlos to give me that data, right? And you can just ask Carlos because Carlos is very near to you, and you give it back because I'm near to you, and you are being in center. So imagine you being in center is Spheron, and both the end are the Carlos becomes a decentralized infrastructure, and I become a user. So whenever I need an asset, I ask you, which is Spheron, and I give you back. And you don't directly interact with the underlying layer. And this layer of yours, which is the middle layer, can be scaled horizontally or vertically wherever you want to scale it, depending on however you want to. So that is how exactly we are bringing the scalability on the retrieval part, which is one part of the entire infra stack. So just to kind of show you how we are tackling that scalability issue on a decentralized infrastructure side.
Yeah, super interesting. Now, moving to how do you see the future? So we talk a lot about solution for Web3 games, but there is still a world of Web2 games that need to make the leap and need to innovate at some point. How do you see this integration and the transition from Web2 games to Web3 games?
So I think that one of the key aspects there is going to be how we onboard not only the games, but everything that's around it, right? Like everybody right now is focused on just like onboarding gaming studios. Like the gaming studio is coming to you and it's like, why would I go into something that I don't know, that's more complicated? Where's the money in it for me, right? Like, because we are all passionate builders, right? Let me make that very clear, right? And in gaming, people are very passionate. Like gamers, like a lot of the people that build gaming software, they get paid below the average of a software developer, and they still do it for years. That's how much they love it, right? So let me be clear that they're very passionate, creators. But even so, right, like obviously from a business perspective, the business is going to be like, where's the money in it, right? Like, why would I go and complicate my life with blockchain, with no particular benefit? So basically what we need to do is start to onboard the creators, right? And start to onboard the Web2 communities, because you need to have the streamers, you need to have the audience, you need to have the engagement. So you're kind of in this, the chicken and egg problem, right? The famous, I need the one side of the market, but I also need the other side, right? So, for example, in Dega, the way we're addressing this is we're closing partnerships with some of the largest gaming streamers in the industry, in the Web2 industry, and we're also closing partnerships with some of the largest events in the industry, right? Like gaming events. So I think that once we have those and we start creating applications using technology from our partners such as Spheron, then that showcase that you can have a blockchain experience with all the benefits of true ownership, of open APIs, of secondary markets, and they don't require you to upload your credit card or anything, that allows you to start just playing and engaging, then we'll be able to onboard many of these games. They'll start coming to us, right? When you say, okay, I have a game or a community of 10 million players here ready to roll, then the games will say, yes, we want to be a part of that. Like, so now all the blockchain things plus making money makes sense, right? And I think that that's kind of like where we'll be doing the coming year. And not only Dega, I think most of the companies in the space will be focused on that.
I think so I believe in one concept, like what he has covered is the same thing, but I kind of imagined it in a very different way. Just let the people FOMO in. And how people will FOMO in is when you bring a lot of votes on the table. It's a political system, right? So if you look at Web3 or any world out there, it's just another political system which drives everyone. So that basically means like if you look at Bitcoin itself, right? So in 2009, 10, and when it got started, nobody was looking at, and suddenly ETF is getting approved, and then suddenly a lot of things are getting happening, and it shows the power of the people. Is like whenever there are the people around, people understand there is a value. So the value is directly proportional to the number of people using it. And that is where I personally feel like what Carlos has picked a point up around the like we bring the people, and how we bring the people is creating the two market-sided thing where you go and onboard tons of people by incentivizing or bootstrapping the liquidity, early liquidity or something, so that they kind of start using your product. Use the same people, go to the into the Web2 world of the other side, and tell them is if you build here, this is what the benefit you will get, and that's it. That is what everyone is looking at, and that is what I would also love to add on. Is it's just a timing and also the way we execute it. But there are few constraints which is always going to be there, like regulatory constraint. There are certain constraints as well. But as the time passing on, things are becoming better. So we can imagine as the time will pass on, the more and more user will come in Web3 space on the gaming sector itself, and we are going to boom, and we are going to bring Web2 folks also FOMO into Web3.
Well, fantastic. I was going to ask you another question, but you kind of like capture it in your answer. Why people should care about your solution? I mean, is there anything else that you want to add, just so we can wrap up the discussion?
I think solutions are a lot into the space. The question, like, why do I use Apple phone and why don't I use Android on daily basis? And why do people use Android and why they use Apple? It's a question like that. So it's always a taste. Okay, so for example, let's say specifically talking from the infra perspective. Okay, not from the user perspective or end user perspective. Infra is all about a test. The more better experience you give to your targeted user, the more chances of you to getting utilized. And since Web3 is quite new and very, very new in terms of the infra space, it took us some time to understand which kind of a user experience is needed. And we came to a conclusion is like, people don't want to switch their attention here and there always. So they want to stick on the same attention timeline. So we are at Spheron, we are just focused on giving the Web2 experience, but with Web3 underlying infrastructure. So that is what we have. I just wanted to add on to kind of like how to accelerate the adoption for Spheron and onboarding user experience.
Yeah, on my side, I'd like to put it short for everybody out there in the audience. Like, why would you use Dega or Spheron? Guys, because we'll just save you years of development, right? Like, we've gone through all the pain points. We've suffered so that you don't have to suffer, and we've simplified this and made it into, a system that works. It just works. It's there. It's ready to roll. You can focus on your business. Let us handle the complexities, right? That's kind of like the short version of why we would use our product specifically, right? Now, in terms of why would you use Web3 in general, I mean, it opens up a whole new universe of revenue models and financing, right? Like generating cash flow from your secondary market trading, generating cash flow from the value that other developers built on top of your system, right? So I create an NFT collection or I create a token and other people make gaming experience on top of that. That's like an instant sell for me, right? At least because I understand it, right? Like gamers, even though it is a very bleeding edge and technology oriented industry, a lot of them are still very conservative. So a lot of the companies are super conservative. I think it was Steam that recently banned a developer's game because it had AI integrated into it. That's silly. That's ridiculous. That's like being against the internet, right? So the same thing happens with blockchain right now, right? It's still, some of them are still a little bit afraid of it, rightfully so. It's something new. But as they start seeing success cases, right, because we're starting to see AAA game quality in a lot of the Web3 development that's going on right now. Like the original Web3 games are like, honestly, they were really bad, but they're starting to get really, really good. So once you start seeing how they rack in cash flow from all of these different type of revenue models and the fact that you can finance without needing access to US markets, right? Like, for example, I'm in Latin America, right? For us, it's super complicated to try to get financing for a gaming company, right? Even in the US, it's not that easy, but they do have some recourse. So in short, why people will want to use us, because there's going to be, good business in it for them, right?
Well, Carlos, Prashant, thank you so much for coming on the show. Anyone listening that is interested in exploring Spheron and Dega solution, they can find all the social media link in the description, and they can always reach out to us and have a conversation, because we are a community, we all build together, and those two guys, they've already done the hard work, and they also want to hear from you to develop things that you want to do. I love the fact that we mentioned about, it's all about user experience. It's all about make sure that we provide solution that people likes and want to use. It's not about try to reinvent the wheel. It's really to get solution that make people lives easier, but also more fun, and unlock new experience as well. So it was a great discussion. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Steffi.
Thank you for having us, Steffi. It was a true pleasure.